Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cope Life Podcast interview series. I'm so excited to be here. I thank all of you for being here. I appreciate you. We got a very special episode today with my main man, Antoine. You guys, when you hear your story, you're going to be blown away by it. But before I say that, I just want to introduce myself to some of you that don't know me. Maybe this is your first time tuning in. I am Charleston Gaines. I'm the emotional intelligence life coach and Cope Life podcast host. And what I do, simply put, is I help veterans gain clarity so that they can live a life more meaningful and fulfilling. And so, without further ado, because I'm excited about it, I'm not going to get into a lot of details. I'm just going to jump right in, bring Antoine up to the stage so we can get this thing rolling.
Charleston is an amazing experience to be here. I appreciate what the Cope Life podcast is bringing to the table. I'm Antoine Howlett. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and author, 33 years old, born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, New York City. Dealt with a lot of adversity, and I've learned to turn all of my obstacles into opportunities. And it's truly a blessing to be here. What I just did, that breath, that success.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And that's the thing about you, man, is that when people get to know you, people get to know your energy. We can't tell, right? When you look at one person to the next, you can't tell what they've been through. You can walk into a room of 20 people and feel like you're the only one that experienced this. I'm the only one that's had trauma. And so when I speak to you, I feel like, oh man, this dude's had a pretty good life.
Yeah.
And and I say that because of your energy, your positivity, right? And for those of you that don't know, Antoine and I had our first conversation on Clubhouse. And then I hosted a room on Clubhouse. This happens quite often for me. I host a room on Clubhouse and one person will show up. Well, that one person was Antoine, and we talked for about an hour or so. And I was like, man, I got to stay connected to this guy. And so when I say that, and I say that because of your energy, your positivity, as well as your story, when people hear what I'm saying right now, they don't know your story. And so let's just jump right in, man. Tell us your story, man. Tell us. I can't even think of a word, man. Tell us the battle. Tell us the story. Let us know you, man. Your origin story. That's how I'm gonna call it.
Definitely. I appreciate it. So, I was born in Brooklyn, New York City, raised in Queens. I grew up in a house where my father left at the age of 6, and roughly around 7 years old, my mom made the decision to leave out of that relationship because it was abusive. He abused alcohol. That situation, that environment required those type of things, and my mother made the biggest leap and left. And I was roughly around 7 years old, and the issue with that is I had no resources. I had no father figure in my life. So as little as 7, I went to the street for guidance. I remember my mom working hard late nights, selling Avon and different things and just trying to provide for me and my brother. And I'd sneak out the house and go hang with friends and do negative things. And just as a child, and it was just my way of thinking that I would find a father figure of how to be a real man. And it was never a good thing. And roughly around the age of 12 is when I was introduced to marijuana at a young age. And now there's speculation about how good and bad it is, but I always say the mind isn't ready for that stuff just yet. And at that age, I use it as entertainment. But now I see that I was actually compressing pain. I was compressing pain at a real young age. When you don't have resources, you compress at a real young age. And it's always good to have people that's watching. And over time, I had my little successes as a young kid, and I had some downfalls. My mother really got tired of it, and she said, Antoine, you got to start doing the right things. This is not you. But I couldn't understand. I was really hard headed, really, really hard headed kid. And over time, I could see it in her eyes that she was getting tired. So this is roughly me growing to the age of 14, 15. My mother said, hey, you know what? You're getting kicked out of school for a whole year in high school. I literally showed up probably 2 months, and it was looking real terrible. She saw the future that I couldn't see. And during that time, she said, you know what, we're going to up and leave and go to Pennsylvania. So I was roughly around 15 years old, 15, 16 years old. She said, "We're out. We're leaving the city. You can't deal with this." And she was right. But as we left in that U-Haul, the same habits came with me. The same habits came with me because I didn't have the resources. I didn't have a person to say, "Hey, what's going on? Hey, this is the right direction to go." I didn't have that person. Everybody was basing their life off of entertainment. The environment that I was in required me to smoke weed, drink alcohol at a young age. And it's something that's important for us to understand. Every environment has a requirement. It's your job to find out what the requirement is and are you settling for that requirement. And at a young age, I was just really in a negative area. And that was pretty much till 16, 17 years old. We moved to a town called Whitehall, Pennsylvania. I was literally like the fourth African American kid in that class. And I just felt good. I felt something new because it wasn't like New York City. New York City, I was in a high school that had pretty much like 30 police officers there stationed. And I moved to Pennsylvania and there was only one police officer there. And I'm like, wow, this is freedom. This is freedom here. But I know it's just a different school. I didn't know. And as I started educating myself and going through the school here, it was a big transition. Like real education existed here. And now that I know it's due to finances, due to certain things happening in the education system. And over the time, I still had little hiccups, right? I was roughly like 17 in school, got my first A in school. New York, I went from, remember, I literally six months out of school and to Pennsylvania actually getting the first A because I had a little bit of change in me. I said, I want to do something right. And over the time, my mother was just like, it's little, but it has to be great. You have to do more. If you want to succeed, you have to do more. But me being hard headed, I never understood that. I never understood that and just being around the wrong people. So, roughly around 18 years old, I was hanging with a couple friends, ended up getting out of high school, graduated. It was great. And I was hard headed. I didn't go to my graduation. I didn't go to my prom. I was just a stubborn kid that's, I'm too good for that. I'm hanging with the older crowd. And that was wrong. That was literally the worst thing I could ever do. So, roughly a little bit after 18, I ended up smoking weed and getting caught with it. And that day was a sign from God for me that I didn't pay attention to. So they caught me with a little bit of weed, and I ended up not doing time, but I had to sit in a cell for a couple hours. And my mother was like, "This is not you. You need to find something better to do." But I was hard headed. I still was around the environment that required that. And over time, I realized that today I see that I tried to change, but you have to have faith and you have to be strong. You really have to preserve yourself and be strong for the battle that's ahead of you. So my first job that I really worked at was one day of work, and it was at the local grocery store. I went into the grocery store and had my orientation, and they said, "Antoine, you can do this. You're good." They ran my background, and supposedly it was fine. So the person who's interviewing me says, "Okay, we're gonna go out there to the register and we're gonna practice bagging these things." And it's just grocery store stuff. So I'm like, okay. So as I'm at the register, the same officer who ended up locking me up for the marijuana walked in for a shoplifter. And I looked and he looked at me and I just kept training. And as he left with the shoplifter, he came back in and he told the boss, he said, "Hey, he looks familiar." And I'm just like, oh gosh, here we go. And I didn't think anything of it. I said, okay, I look familiar. I messed up before, but it doesn't matter today because I'm clearly trying to change. And literally 30 minutes into that job, they ended up terminating me my first day. And that was a point at my life where I needed a lot, but it wasn't, I couldn't find it within myself. I broke there and I gave up on society as a whole. I said, clearly, if I'm trying to do something, there's people in this world that doesn't want me to succeed, even if it's at a grocery store.
Mhm.
And today I'm blessed to have that experience because I can give it to others. But after that experience, it broke me so bad that I went back to selling drugs. Literally went back to doing that. I had some jobs here and there, working in warehouses, but the primary thing that I would do was just sell weed to local people. And it wasn't good at all. Over the time, partying, getting older, doing the same thing, but still having that old, younger me mindset, still being 13 years old at the age of 22, at the age of 23, still being 13 years old with my habits and my actions. And I realized that I was getting tired of it. So I said, you know what? We're going to have to try a better job. We're going to have to do something different. And that was roughly around 23. I ended up working in a warehouse, started selecting cases, picking up big cases, throwing them on pallets, riding forklifts. And a woman there said, hey, Antoine, you know, you'd be good in the office. You know how to communicate very well. So I decided, I said, hey, let me try to take this. And I was dibbling and dabbling, still in the negative stuff, but it was like 50-50. You can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It will never work. And that time, me being the drinker, being the smoker, I said, hey, it's Friday night. We're going to go out. We're going to have some drinks. And it was my mother's birthday. Her birthday was the next day. The eve of her birthday, I went out, had some drinks, smoked with some friends, and ended up getting to a fight, right? Real big fight over some issues, communication issues between other friends. And one thing led to another, and a friend ended up being stabbed. Now, me being there, I was there. I'm Antoine, I'm always there. And one person got stabbed, and they charged me with conspiracy to aggravated assault. But what really happened there, what I realized is I don't blame anyone but myself, because when you build a house, everybody's building it together. The workers are building it together. 500 or 200 workers build one house and they do it great. And over time, I realized that accountability starts within. It doesn't start with pointing fingers. It never starts that way. And you don't find success pointing fingers. So, me being young and lost, police take me in, and I say, hey, this must be like TV. I'll take a lie detector test. I'm fine. I didn't do anything. I'm fine. No, it doesn't work that way. Conspiracy works that if you're there, you're there. It doesn't matter. And I had to learn that the hard way. I sat in Lehigh County prison for 7 to 8 months before I saw the judge. And during that time, that was actually a liberating time for me, because my first 3 months in there, I said, you know, I could go back out. I still had the old mindset. I said, I'd go back out and go party and chill. And I just want to get out of here. I don't like this place. And literally 4 months into it, I said, you know what? Let me see what the Bible can bring to me. Picked up a Bible, read it the first time. I'll be honest, Charleston, I did not understand anything. I was lost. I was lost. I'm looking at these words and I was just so lost. But the second time I read it, I said, okay, these are stories. And it seems like these are stories about regular people. And the third time I read it, I started comparing the stories to myself. And that's where the breakthrough happened, where I realized that I was just a normal person in the wrong direction. I could get out of it no matter what society says. I can get out of this situation. It doesn't matter. And I sat there 8 months. The judge, I remember the day of sentencing, I walked in to the courthouse and my mother was there, my father was there. And mind you, my father really is not in my life as much as a father is. And he showed up, I'm pretty sure he was drunk. And the judge said, hey, I haven't seen a person's parents here in a long time. And me, I looked at my mom and I'm just like, I'm so ashamed. So the judge said, you know what? We're going to get you out of here. You're sentenced 8 months. You'll have parole. You know, I had parole for about 3 years and they let me off early 2 years. But the exit of jail is what really did it to me. As soon as I left prison, I remember like yesterday, I got home and I turned on YouTube and I saw this guy, this white man named Jim Rohn. And I said, man, this guy looks funny. Let me hear what he's saying. And he said, success is not something you pursue, it's something you become, it's something you attract. And I wrote it on the wall. And I started looking at that every day. And I'm like, what does he mean by this? And I wrote down, I said, what is success to me? And I wrote money, cars, houses, clothing. And then I said, what is real success? Life, existence. And then I realized that what he was saying, those are the things that I'm chasing. Why am I chasing that? That's not success. It's going to keep running. The Bible even said that if those who chase money, money takes wings. So there's a deep connection there. And I said, I'm going to have to follow something that he's saying. I'm going to have to look into personal development a little bit more. So over the years, I decided to look into personal development. I had times that I wanted to break, right? I remember filling out 101 job applications before I got the warehouse job that I recently left. And there was times where I'd apply to a chicken coop farm where I'd be the guy processing the chickens. It didn't matter. I just wanted to work. I just didn't want to go back to the streets. I didn't want to go back to selling drugs, and I definitely didn't want to go back to prison because the people I met in there, they didn't belong there. Some did belong there, but some of them really were different. And I said, I have to do everything. If I can't get a job, I have to find within how to bring myself into a better position. And one job called me. It was Wakefern ShopRite Warehouse. They said, "Hey, we're looking for people to work here. We'll pay you $11 an hour." And I took it. I said, "How
Yes.
much overtime do you offer?" They said, "We have a lot of overtime, and some weeks it's unlimited." And how I looked at it, I said, "Okay, if they're paying me $11 an hour and I can bring in $1,000 a week, that's the only thing that matters. I don't care if I gotta bust my butt for it." So my wife now, Jenny, we were dating back then, and I asked her, I said, "Hey, babe, I'm really trying to focus on this, and I really don't want to go back to this place." And she's always been the person that said, "Hey, focus. You can do this. You can change." And I remember that call changed everything because the first day of work, I did like 12 hours. And they were like, "Hey, you've done this before." I did it probably for a couple months. I was new at warehousing. So I said, "Okay, I'm pretty good at this stuff. I'm pretty good at working hard." And I decided to keep with it, stay there. And over the years in the company, I met a guy named Tony, and he was a union representative there. And Tony said, "Antoine, I find something special in you. Would you like to represent these guys in the warehouse?" And I'm like, "There's 300 warehouse men here. What do you mean represent them?" And he said, "Well, pretty much when they're having trouble, you'd be their lawyer." And I'm like, "Well, that's ironic." And over the time, I've learned so much just by going under his wings. I ended up negotiating a union contract with him. And during that time is where I really crafted my speaking. I learned business and corporations and how finances are handled, how you actually negotiate. And that was really, really important for me because I learned something different and I enjoyed it. So over the time working in Wakefern, ended up negotiating the contract. We did a real good negotiation, helped the guys, did so much for them. And I'm like, there's has to be something that I can do more here. So I talked to a good supervisor and a good mentor. His name's Armando. And he said, "Antoine, you got the gift to gab." And I'm like, "What is that? Let me look it up." And it's just the art of speaking. And I decided, I said, "Hey, Armando," I said, um, the new hires that we're getting in here, they're real young guys. We had guys coming in at the age of 50 as well, just coming into a warehouse. I said, "I'd like to talk to them about the benefits of the union and the benefits of working. And there's nobody in the company doing that. Can I do that?" Now there was always stipulations with the union and the company coming into an agreement. So he said, "You know what, we're going to give you a shot. Speak to a class of 20 individuals and inspire them to work." So what I would do is I'd go into the meeting and I'd tell the guys about the benefits. These guys could care less. They were young. You tell them health insurance and they're just like, "Tell me how much I'm making an hour."
Yeah.
And what I realized is for this crowd, what would change if I brought up my story? So when the supervisor would walk out, I'd bring up my story and I'll tell the guys, "Hey, my name's Antoine. I ended up catching a felony. I worked here real hard, 90 days straight to buy a house, 40 days straight to buy a down payment for a car. You can do the same thing too." And that speech actually stuck with the workers more than the speech of them, me telling them, hey, this is how you work, or this is what the company brings to you. And I started practicing it. Every week I'd probably speak 5 to 6 times to different guys. And I realized that people were saying, hey, where can I talk to you outside of work? And that's when I decided, okay, it's time to realize that your pain, your obstacles that you went through is actually an opportunity to give to others. And during that time, I started a website called becomeyoutoday.com. And over the journey that I've been through, I was always a student. I'm always a student to information. But what I realized is so many people think there's a price on information, but the information is actually free at some point. And I decided to start Become You Today as a resource for people to find tips in emotional intelligence, financial literacy, the things that actually helped me get to this point was the resources that I found. So it's weird to say, but some people wouldn't go to one site, but they'd go to one site because I made it. And I said, okay, if they're going to come to my site, I'm going to give them this good stuff and they are going to enjoy it and they're going to use it and learn from it. And that's where I'm at today. I've started a trucking company called Chasing Deals Logistics. Ended up leaving that 9 to 5. I took a big leap, and that was scary. And it's a blessing to be here. I have Chasing Deals Logistics, BecomeYouToday.com, Howlett Creations LLC. It's so many different avenues that I've learned in entrepreneurship that I can do. And that was just the best leap. The leap that I took, I always tell people there's 4 acronyms that I use for it. There's an acronym that I use for it. And I took the leap. I focused on leadership, experience, accountability, and purpose. And I believe that if you focus on those 4 things during any leap that you take, you're going to grow. You're going to grow. You're going to get to the next level, whatever the next level is. Even if you need a job, if you focus on those areas, you'll get to the next level. If you want to get out of your job, you focus on those next areas and you'll get to the next level. And that's what I use to kind of get to my point. And I just want a lot of people to understand that if you really, really focus on yourself and develop yourself personally, you can do anything.
Man, I love your story, man. You're such an inspiration. I'm gonna tell you, man, I'm a good listener, and I have a bunch of questions about a lot of different things that you said. And
Gotcha.
because what I really want is that I really want people to understand your perspective and your emotions during different parts of your story.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I think about is when you talked about, your father not being there and then you turning to the streets. And so here's one thing a lot of people don't understand is that we're social beings. We need companionship. We need connection.
Yes.
Lots of research has shown that even babies without physical touch and connection develop mental disabilities. And so when I hear that you were missing your father and went to the streets looking for a father figure, that's what you're supposed to do. That's what we do. We look for that connection. What I want to know is, did you find someone or something that, from your perspective, was a father figure?
Well, my issue was I didn't even know what a father figure was. Right.
Yes.
So I had a best friend named Derek, right? And he was the only friend that I had whose dad was around.
How old were you
And
at that time?
I was around 13, 12 years old. And he was the only friend that I had that whose dad was around. And I looked at that relationship and I'm like, wow, that's incredible. It was to the point where I'd lie to him and tell him like, yeah, my dad's around just so I could feel better, but it never worked. And the worst part about it was I didn't know how to find one person. I took things from every single person and said, that's how you become a man. But every single person that I took that from, they were feeding me negative energy. They were feeding me negative things. A man doesn't sell drugs. A man doesn't try to rob people. A man doesn't do that. And that environment required that. So I picked it up from a negative environment.
So when you're between 12 and 14 years old, you don't have a father available, but you're leaning on friends, learning things from different people. What would you say your perspective of yourself was? Like, can you think it's almost like we call it metacognition, right? Thoughts about your thoughts. What did you think at that age about your value as a person?
I definitely didn't see any value in myself. I remember a story that my mom tells me. At the age of 5, her and my father was in a car. They drove up to a bank, and I was in the back seat. And she said that there was a guy in a Mercedes Benz. He rolled his windows down and went into the bank. And she said, at the age of 5, I looked to the right and I said, hey, somebody can steal that. Now, when you have that mindset as a 5-year old, it's not good at all. So by the age of 12, I had no belief in myself. The inner belief was gone because what I was seeing in the world. I didn't know I could do anything. I even thought it was sports, music, or selling drugs. And that's where I was at between 12 to 14. I had the limitations was really, really high on myself, the self limitations as well.
See, that's so important, And one thing that I talk about with emotional intelligence is how self-awareness is the foundation, right? And that's why I wrote my ebook. You can see the link, you can download it for free, leveraging self-awareness, because it's really about knowing, what you feel and why you feel that way, and then how you experience and express those emotions, and applying that to this time in your life, right? What were you feeling? Worthless. You didn't have much value. You were looking for other people to just validate that you had something of value, right? And why did you feel that way? Well, you spent a lot of time alone,
Yeah.
where maybe other kids could be being raised by their father, you weren't. And what happens a lot of times is you wonder why, right? One thing I need people to understand is that as a child, you're not responsible for the actions of adults.
Mm,
But when you're 11 and your father's not there, you think it's your fault.
yeah.
You think there's something wrong with me. And so then, and I say that because there's a natural progression. Where do people look at me like I have value? Where do people seem like they actually care about me? And if the answer is the streets, then that's where you're going to go.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. Simple as that. So when you went to the first time that you went to jail, you said you were there for a couple hours. You were caught with some weed, and then did that? How did that impact your sense of self worth? Just who you are, even your trajectory, like who I am and who I'm becoming. Did you even think that deeply during those couple hours?
I didn't think that deeply. I, to be honest, I thought I said my mom is gonna get at me, and I have to keep this away from her as much as possible. I didn't think I was self centered. I didn't think about the world outside and the people that I was affecting outside. And I had a little bit of change in me at that point because I did try to do something different. I remember trying to go to the military and they said, hey, we can't bring you in because the weed charge. This was a couple of years ago. They said we can't bring you in because of that. And it was another downer for me. It was like a slap in the face. Every no was a slap in the face, but now I see today that every no is actually a blessing. But
Yes.
with my mindset at that time, the nose was just another way for me to bury my pain.
Yeah. When you talk about those no's and then you talk about some of the decisions that you made, what I think about is sometimes we don't realize that we're doing what we need to do to survive.
Yeah.
And so when you're young, you don't really know what survival is. And so for you, survival in the moment was, man, my mom better not find out. Survival in the moment was, man, what I'm gonna do when I get out of here. And so, and I say that because we have a tendency to judge ourselves. And I love that you've overcome that. You're not like one thing you have not said was you were a bad person. You weren't a bad kid. You made bad mistakes, and there's a difference. And so that's one thing I love about you. When would you say you began to realize um, that maybe you needed to take more ownership of just the direction of your life? Like when did it really start to click?
It really started. There was one incident while I was incarcerated, and I don't usually bring this up, but it had nothing to do with me. It was about a younger kid who came into the jail. I was in considered the violent section with people who had high risk crimes, and this younger kid came in. looked like he was 17 years old, 18 years old, and he came in and he looked at me. I could see in his eyes that he don't want to be there. Now, me, I look a little bit younger, but I'm kind of older, supposedly. But I started talking to this kid, and I said, what are you in here for? And he said, man, I went here to this side of town to pick up some marijuana, and my friend in the car ended up killing the guy for the marijuana, and my friend left, and the cops came, and I was there, and I looked and I said, whoa. And I said, what type, like, what the, like, how much marijuana were you trying to get? And he said, just a bag. And after that, I realized there's multiple perspectives you can have. I had the perspective of being him, like, wow, that really sucks. Then I had the perspective of his friend, like, that is wrong. Then I had also the perspective of the kid who lost his life because of that. And all of those people could have been me. And at 17, 18, I said, this kid, I remember when I was that young. He just needs better resources. And that changed me while I was incarcerated, because it's in a moment, anything can happen that could throw your whole life away. And this kid is serving 24 years right now. And I'm just like, wow, like that quick, the quickness of a decision. Every action has to be monitored in life, every action. And that was a big change for me. His story really changed a lot for me.
Wow, that's crazy. Like when I think about those 24 years, because that's I mean, if he was 17, right, then that puts him in his 40s. He's lost so much time for things that, in the moment. So you make a decision that turns bad, but in that moment, in the micro moment when the other people were acting, he had no control.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy how that happens. You remind me of when I was in the Air Force. There was this thing called correctional custody, where we would take these people, these young airmen, and they would essentially be in I don't know, like correctional custody, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like bootleg jail just for airmen. And we would take them to a Scared Straight. We would take them downtown to the jail for a day. And this was in San Angelo, Texas. So I went down to the county jail with a couple of these guys, and you just see guys in there, you see inmates, and you talk to them. And one of these kids, he said they had a 3-strike rule or something that they were applying, right? So he was 22 years old. He said he was caught with a kilo of cocaine, I think, but it was his third arrest.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm going to die in here. 75 years, no chance of parole because of the 3rd strike rule.
Yeah.
And I think about it, so like when I think about that, I think about how so many people's lives are ruined by really bad decisions in the micro moments.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen for you. Like your life isn't ruined, you're thriving. But when people hear your story, they can hear poor kid in the streets, selling weed, making bad decisions, ended up in prison. How do you get people to recognize that actually kind of lucky,
Yeah.
and that things worked in your favor? Like, don't feel sorry for Antoine, I guess is what I'm saying.
I call it luck by action, right?
Yes.
So it's luck by action. And the reason why I say that is because every action has a reaction. And my luck by action was me deciding to press play on a YouTube video, me deciding to write the quote on the wall, me deciding to go into the success.com clubhouse room and talk to you guys, me deciding to take that. That's luck by action. Some see it as luck, but only a few who've been through certain processes in life know that it's actually action. And there's little 1% actions that I've taken over time that has helped me reach great success, where some people look at it as luck. But I could be those other kids. I could have been that. But I decided to take certain actions that my side society and culture may say, hey, that's boring. That's weird. I decided to do that. And the weird things got me to where I'm at today.
Man. I love it. I love the perspective. I love the mindset, right? Because honestly, when you say that, I hear sometimes on Clubhouse where people will talk about the things that they went through. People who've attempted suicide multiple times, who have spent a lot of time in prison, things like that. And then you hear other people who have this perspective of, I wish I went through that so that I could have that story. And it's like, no, you don't wish you went through that,
Yeah.
you know? And so when you're talking about, I love what you're talking about mindset, right? Luck by action, because what it was for you was just, it was a constant in your mind that something needs to change. And so what I'm thinking is, as you were as you were doing things like writing the quote on the wall, going to the website, watching Jim Rohn, how did you how much did you actually believe you could change your life?
Well, I'll tell you this, right? It was August, I think it was August 16th. I decided that I needed to really deep dive into personal development. And I remember my wife said, "We only have $400 in the account, and you got to go work another 50 plus hours next week." So I said, "All right, with $400, what can I do to just develop my mindset a little bit better?" And this was while I was working in a warehouse. I decided to go to an Eric Thomas event in Philadelphia. It was called the Verified event. And I sat there and I listened to him speak. And it was a moment where he said, "Hey, if anybody wants to ask me a question, ask me a question." And I raised my hand. I said, "Hey, I mean, Antoine," I gave him a bit of my story, and he cut me off. He said, "You are a royal felon." And at that point, I realized that sometimes you need people to believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And once he opened my mind with that word, royal felon, I realized anything's possible. The title, the label is just a label. You determine what's after that label. And that event really changed a lot for me. It really actually helped me with the public speaking and the personal development and just to believe in myself.
I love that. It's very true where you say sometimes you need someone to believe in you more than you believe in yourself, because so many of us have been through that,
Yeah.
across multiple areas of our lives where you just need someone to believe in you, right? And you see quotes like, if no one else will believe in you, believe in yourself. And that sounds nice and all, but sometimes you really just don't believe in yourself and you need that from someone else. And so when you're talking about the labels, I think about, are you a felon or are you someone who committed a felony? Because there's a difference. And so when you hear that word, how does that word felon, how do you process that in your mind as far as your overall identity of who you are?
Well, now I look at it completely different. When I'll be honest, when I stepped out of prison and I jumped into working in the 9 to 5 realm, it was really hard. And like I told you, I went through 101 applications, and I could have broke at 10 applications. I could have broke at 50 applications, but I didn't break. And during the time of working at the 9 to 5, I tried hardest to even get out of the union position and move up to a supervisor. But they never let me get that far. And I realized that was because the limitation, the felony. And over time, I said, okay, if these companies, these corporations understand that Antoine's impactful, but due to rules, we can't let him thrive here and let him help us here. What can I do differently? How can I show them that even with this felony, I can succeed even stronger, even better? I could actually mentor your supervisors, even with this felony. And over time, I realized the felony is really just a mental limitation. There are some situations where you can't do a lot, and I understand that. But for me, it was just a mental limitation. It was just okay. These jobs will not accept you. What can you do next to show people that anything's possible? I didn't look at it as bad, bad, bad. I looked at it as God's actually giving me a different way out.
I like that. I like that because, again, it's about mindset. and you had to choose your mindset. Because so for example, when they say we're not going to let you do this because of the felony, lots of people are in that situation. And it's very easy for you to say, that's not fair. Why are they doing this to me? And then you blame them and you whine and cry about it. And a lot of times the complaints are valid, but you
Yeah.
chose a different mindset. And I really appreciate that. So let me ask you this. Let's switch gears a little bit here. So now that you are doing the professional speaking, now that you're having that impact and influence that people need to hear your story. Who are you speaking to? Where do you feel that you're having the greatest impacts?
At-risk individuals, at-risk individuals, and that can be any age. The thing in America, you can catch a felony at any age. And sad to say, our society has a lot of at-risk youth. We have a lot of at-risk millennials. We have a lot of at-risk elderly people. And it's just to the point where I've realized that that's my core group where I'm like, hey, you can get out of any situation, even if there's something called the prison of experience, right? That can make a person at risk. A person who's went through my childhood experiences, that's a limitation. That's a prison that they're in. And some people actually take them with them till they grow older. My journey and my reasoning is to help those at-risk individuals get up out of their situation.
I like that. I like that. When you talk about the at-risk youth, one thing that I think about is how you talked about so many times you had a lack of resources growing up. And I think that's very important because a lot of people, when they think of at-risk youth, they think bad kids. But in reality, it's a lack of resources, whether it's a lack of connection to role models or maybe just the way that the finances are set up. The school just isn't very good, right? Um,
Absolutely.
but you chose your mindset through multiple different scenarios, living in multiple places, lots of different adversity. You chose your mindset. And so, what do you say to that at risk youth who says, I am who I am and I can't change, or I'm going to be me? And
Hmm.
what do you say to that kid?
In order to change, you have to see something bigger within you, right? You really have to think of the next level. You have to think of the better you. And it'll take some time, but you really have to break yourself down, shed a tear, cry, express your feelings to others, speak, and then listen. It's important that we're in a world where so many people want to talk, but no one really wants to listen. And I just really want people to listen a bit more. That at-risk youth needs to just listen a little bit differently. Listen to the right people, but listen a little bit differently.
I love that, right? Just listening, because the truth is the way that we build relationships is like to be seen and to be heard. Are you
Yeah,
listening to me? Am I listening to you? And a lot of these kids feel like no one's listening to them, no one cares about them. But in reality, people are expressing support or people do care about them, but they're shutting it off because they don't believe in
yes.
themselves. Have you had have you had someone that was just I'm sure I feel like I know the answer already, right? But like someone that you can just see like the anger like spilling out, like just even in their body language, like I'm angry, I hate my life, and like everything sucks. Like they're just a ball of anger.
Yeah. There's one you'll meet a lot of individuals like that. And on my journey, I've met individuals that way who feel that they are nothing. And one thing I express to people is you'll never really see me talk about money. The reason why is because I believe success is in the breath. We're here, and that is success itself. Everything else around us is just marketed to us. It's influenced to us in a certain way, but existing is true success, right? And doing things and helping others, that's true success. So I always try to separate that from individuals because a lot of people feel that they're in this situation because of finances. If you look at the statistics. A lot of people really think money's their issue, but it's not money. It's actually the mindset habits, the behavior habits, the addiction habits. Those are really the issues. The prison and the experience, the experience prison. That's what they're going through. And for me, I just realized I have to, when I'm speaking to individuals, I have to separate the things that they were marketed and actually bring something new to them, bring feelings, bring emotional intelligence to them, let them understand their emotions. And most at-risk youth, they don't want to express that because I see myself at 14. I didn't even want to talk about emotions. At 22, at 21, I didn't want to talk about emotions. I had the ego take over everything.
Yeah, when you say that, I think a lot about just about the way that we judge ourselves, right? And so when we're talking about you don't want to talk about emotion, a part of that is because, if you're in a situation where you don't have a father figure, you don't have male role models, that you can reach out to personally, you have to take your environment and decide for yourself what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
And there's very few examples of what it means to be a man where the example is expressing their emotions, where they're in touch with their emotions and able to have that conversation.
Yeah. That is so true. So absolutely true. And it's at some point you realize that we learn emotions based off the five people that we're around. And I'm so happy that I didn't pick up on my father's emotions against my mother being abusive. I didn't pick up on those emotions. And there's it gets to a point where you understand life is you have to be careful with who you're around. You have to value yourself, but also value the circle and also monitor the circle, monitor the media that's coming into you, monitor the entertainment that you're using, monitor everything because it comes out in the way you act.
Yeah, definitely. I love that because when you're talking about monitoring that, you're monitoring the inputs, but also monitor the processing and the output, And so the processing for me is how do you feel when I get this information, I get this input, do I feel angry? Do I feel like I want to be violent or do I feel threatened? And if that's the case and I understand the cause, then turn it off.
Yeah.
And even with your circle, you mentioned monitoring your circle. There are people that, man, they maybe you've been around them for years, but people change. And now you're to the point where you feel uncomfortable around them. You have to recognize that your emotions are communicating something to you. So if
Yeah.
there's a reason that you feel uneasy in your body, pay attention to that.
Absolutely.
And then you're able to make decisions where you have to change your circle. A lot of people are worried about if I grow, right? If I succeed, if I make these things happen, am I going to leave my friends behind? But that's not what happens. What happens is they leave you
Yes.
because they're uncomfortable in your growth.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
so with that said, man, what I want to dive into now is you mentioned you help at-risk youth and you're a professional speaker. You've got different things going on. Your email address and website are, of course, scrolling to the bottom if anyone wants to reach out to you. But really, if someone wants to reach out to you, what do you have to offer, and how do we make it happen?
So what I have to offer is pretty much me, right? And my deep core experiences and how I express myself. If I can do this, you can definitely do this. If I can go from being in a basement with water going through the ceiling, falling on my clothes and spraying my mom's perfume on my clothing to smell good going into school and then coming into this, you can do the same thing. It's just being able to see that light and know that there's going to be a process of going through to get to that light. To get to the end of the tunnel, you have to go through the process. So you have to be ready for it and equipped. And there may be some stumbles, you may fall here and there, but look at the end. Focus on the end, but remember the steps in between. And that'll get you to it. That's what I offer anybody that I speak to. There's steps in between that needs to be focused on during any leap. What are the steps? Leadership, experience, accountability, and purpose. I truly believe those are the steps.
I really love it. I love the idea of having a mantra, having the steps that you can apply in the micro moments. Being able to break that down. So
Yeah.
in this moment that sucks, what about my leadership?
Yeah.
What about that? What am I doing right now? How am I applying that to my life right now? And when it becomes ingrained within you, then you're more likely to ask those questions. You're more likely to hold yourself accountable. You're more likely to compare yourself to really who you're trying to be, your goal, your end state, as opposed to focusing on the negativity right now. It's that mindset, right? And so right now, what's the main thing that you're doing, right? The main thing with your business, I guess the core of your business.
So the core of my business is to give. That's what it is. It's actually just to give. Give people that dose of information, that visual dose of information that you can transition. And that's what it's about. It's really about giving as much as possible, because the giver's the winner. And I've learned that over my life and over the transitions that I've made, giving has always made me successful. Giving has always made me the winner that I am today.
I love it. And so when you say that giving has made you successful, how do you define success?
I define success as an agreement between you and yourself of your fullest potential without materialistic items.
I like that. I like that so much because I feel like, well, first of all, you had an answer, right? And it sounds simple, but there's a lot of people that you can ask them in the beginning of their struggle, how do you define success? And they don't know.
Yes,
What they want is the pain to stop. What they want is to get out of the situation. But what you were saying was to see the end. And if you can't see the end, if you can't visualize that, then what are you working towards?
absolutely.
Because like, are you even worthy of what's coming at the end? Well, if you don't know what's coming at the end, then what are you working towards? And what I love about what you're saying is that you talk about the process, and people need to recognize that they are worthy of the process. They're worthy of the work to get to the end state. And
Yes.
then when they do that, they can be they can be like you. They can focus on giving. They can help others get there as well.
Yeah, you could definitely become anything you want. When I look at life as a tree, right? And trees bear fruits. Fruits are given to us. So what type of tree are you? What are you bearing and what are you giving to others? And that really helped me understand that, hey, you can give to more, and the things that you give can actually outlive you. That's the goal. Give something that can outlive you.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Right, just something that can outlive you. Because when I think about success or I think about mindset, I think about a lot of people looking at not having enough money, not having enough time, not having enough focus. And even where you're coming from, this mindset that you're talking about is it's an infinite mindset. Your impact doesn't have an expiration date. And these other limitations, right? These other resources that you don't have, they're only barriers because you've decided they're barriers. And that goes back to your definition of success, that internal agreement where we can agree that I'm not bringing these excuses with me. I'm not bringing them with me.
Absolutely. And that's just the core of it. Realizing that you're bigger than the things outside of you. And actually understand, one thing that really helped me was during my time of working a 9 to 5, I was actually in college full time as well for a 2 year degree in marketing, which actually influenced me to create the ebook marketing mentality that's on my becomeyoutoday.com website. And during that time of being in college and learning marketing, I knew as a felon I could not get a job. I already knew that. So I said, okay, with marketing, there's two things you can learn. You can learn how to work your business, and you can learn the things that were marketed to you and how were they marketed to you. So with marketing, I learned that it really can decide where you live, how you act, how you think, and you have to protect what you're being marketed to. So I took that degree and I said, okay, let me focus on the business, learn how to market great content to people in a good way that's actually going to help them grow. And when I wrote Marketing Mentality, it was a 9-page book, and it's some real stuff in there because as I'm writing it, I started seeing the things that were brought to me. I started seeing, oh my gosh, there was cigarette logos on the store that was down the street from our school. What the heck was that doing there? And I realized, yeah, that's why B was smoking cigarettes at 8 years old, because the access was so easy. And over time, I'm just like, wow, these things, there has to be someone or something that can stop this, that can filter this, that could show people, hey, if you come here, you'll be marketed to positive things. You'll be marketed to things that's going to help you grow. And that's what I got to the point where doing that 2-year degree was truly a blessing. And I got that degree literally by the hands of the union. It was completely free, a 2-year degree, and I took it with me and I decided to go for it. And I got it and I showed my mother and I'm like, thank you. 10 years ago, I tried to go to college and I completely failed that. I only passed business and I went to party the rest of the days. So 10 years later, I have a degree in marketing and I can give it to others.
I love it. I love it so much, man. I appreciate you so much for being here. Man, Antoine, you're the real deal. It's funny. I remember when we were talking on Clubhouse before, there would be certain rooms where you would join the room and you would be asked to speak. And I remember your response would be, well, I'm at work right now.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this dude is grinding. I remember you, because you talk about working 90 days straight for the down payment to buy the house. And I remember, I think our first conversation, you were at like day 70 something or 80 something. Like,
Yeah. It was
and I'm like,
hard.
it reminds me of this line. I forget what song it's from. I forget the artist, but there was a line that said something like, getting my body to do what my mind tells it to do.
Absolutely. During those 90 days, I remember it like yesterday. My wife, we were in the apartment and we knew we just had to move. And with the felony, they said, hey, you can't have this place, you can't have that place. So I said, okay, we have to get a home. And she ended up finding a house that wasn't even built yet. And I said, okay, what's the cost? She said, oh, it'll take you this much thousand to have the down payment. Now she was working insurance, which was incredible, but it wasn't enough, and I could get it through the overtime. So I said, okay, I'm gonna have to do 12 hours plus 14 hours when I can for the next 90 days, because if we don't meet the 90-day mark, we won't have the money. And I said, well, every morning I prayed. I said, God, please let me get through this day. We got 72 more days left. And I got through it and we met the closing costs, and actually was the first cousin in my generation to have a house. And it was incredible because I was just like, I didn't even know what I was doing. I was setting the standard. And you us as human beings, when we do great things, put it like this, when our community is negative and we do get great things, we set the standard.
Yes.
That's what it is. You have to set the standard in your house. You have to set the standard in your community. You have to set the standard in the world. And that's a big responsibility. And once you take it on, it's incredible. It's incredible. That is a blessing.
I love it. I love it so much, man. So I got one more question for you, just for us to close it out. You went through a lot, from what you endured as a child, what again, your time incarcerated, working 90 straight days while going to school full time, while of course having a family. And so when people hear that, it sounds really hard. My last question to you to close us out is, what do you say to the person that says that's too hard?
Well, I'll tell them this. It's hard. That's absolutely true. But the hardest things to go through get you the greatest things to see through. The hardest things you grow through will get you the greatest things that you can see through. And if you stick with the hard, you'll be as more successful than you think. Stick with the hard, because the easy route isn't always the easiest at the end.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here, man. We're gonna do this again. We're gonna do
I
this again
appreciate
because
it, man.
I know that you have a lot more to offer. So we're gonna do it again. But again, I want to say thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who was here, everyone who joined in, and
Truly appreciate it, and I love what you're doing here, and it's an amazing thing to be a part of this community. And just remember, for everybody who's viewing this, turn your obstacles into opportunities. Anything's possible. You can do this. Stick with it and grow. Stick with it and grow and become you today. That's it. Just become you today. Tomorrow's not the start, but today is the start.
exactly. And with that, I'm gonna close it out. Thank you so much for that, and I will see all of you guys next time. Thank you for joining us on the Cope Life podcast.
I appreciate it. Thank you.